Between 1932 and 1962, over 73,000 prisoners endured the brutal Vorkuta Gulag north of the Arctic Circle, facing starvation, constant daylight, and temperatures of -30 degrees. The camp was merciless and remote, but for those who survived, life continued amidst unimaginable suffering. Here's what life was really like inside the worst Soviet Gulag camp. Okay, so if you're here a lot, you know I ask for likes and subscribes, but seriously, where are you guys? Comment your location and time. Sometimes I see someone from California listening at 3 p.m. and I'm like, are you napping? Alright, Soviet gulags tonight. But wait, are you comfortable? No, really? Check. Pillows, blankets, the whole deal. Where we're going, you'll want to be settled. You jolt awake to complete darkness. For a second, just one merciful second, you forget where you are. Your mind reaches for the comfort of your old bed, your old life. Then the stench hits you, the sour smell of unwashed bodies packed too tightly together, the sharp tang of urine, the musty odour of wet concrete that never dries. You're in a cattle car. You've been in this cattle car for, what, 6 days? 7? You've lost count. The rhythmic clacking of train wheels on track has become the heartbeat of your existence. We're stopping, someone whispers in the darkness. The car falls silent. All 80 of you, crammed into a space meant for livestock, hold your breath collectively. The train groans and shudders to a halt. Then comes the sound you've been dreading, metal scraping against metal as the door slides open. Arctic air rushes in like a slap. It's so cold it burns your lungs. The darkness outside is broken only by the harsh beams of searchlights sweeping across the fresh snow. Guards with rifles stand in silhouette against the white backdrop. Behind them looms a sight that will haunt you for years, if you live that long. "Welcome to Vorkuta," a guard says flatly. "Your new home." The train hadn't prepared you for this. Nothing could. You're about 100 miles north of the Arctic Circle, in a place so remote it barely existed before the Soviet authorities decided it was the perfect location to exile those they wanted to disappear. "Move!" A guard shoves the prisoner next to you with the butt of his rifle. "Everyone out!" You stumble down onto the snow. Your city shoes, the ones you were wearing when they arrested you 3 weeks ago, provide no protection against the cold. Within seconds, you can't feel your toes. Unlike your warm bed right now, where your feet are probably toasty under the blankets, here, the cold is an immediate threat to your survival. "You know what's wild?" the man beside you mutters. Stalin calls this correction, like we're all just slightly off course and need a little nudge. A rifle butt slams into his back. He drops to his knees with a muffled cry. "No talking," the guard barks. Line up now." You join the ragged line of new arrivals. Many are political prisoners like yourself, teachers, engineers, writers, ordinary workers who made the fatal mistake of speaking too freely. Some are actual criminals. A few are foreign prisoners of war. All of you are now the same, property of the state, to be used until you break. The processing begins in a freezing wooden building with peeling paint. Inside, a bored official sits behind a desk covered with papers. "Name," he says without looking up. You tell him. "Crime." "I didn't," you start, but he cuts you off. "Article 58, he says, already writing it down. The infamous Article 58, counter-revolutionary activities. It could mean anything from telling a joke about Stalin to being related to someone who told a joke about Stalin. "Strip," another official commands. You hesitate. "I said strip." He raises his hand as if to strike you. In the bitter cold of the unheated room, you remove your clothes. They take everything. Your watch, your belt, your wedding ring. The few personal possessions you managed to keep during your journey are confiscated. You will never see them again. I've been researching this stuff for years, I should mention, and the most shocking part was how systematic the dehumanization was. Like, they didn't just take your stuff, they took your name, replaced it with a number. After they shave your head, ostensibly for hygiene, but really as one more way to strip your identity, you're given your camp uniform, thin cotton pants, a jacket that's seen better days, a pair of foot cloths, and crude wooden shoes that won't last a month in the mines. The foot cloths are supposed to be wrapped around your feet before putting on the shoes. Nobody shows you how to do this properly. You'll learn later, after your first blisters form and become infected. Next, the official calls, and you're pushed toward another room. Outside again, you join the other new arrivals. A guard addresses the group. Listen carefully. You are here to work. You work, you eat. You don't work, you don't eat. The sooner you accept this, the longer you'll live. He explains the rules. Wake up is at 5 a.m. Roll call at 5:30. Work begins at 6 and continues until the quota is met, usually 14 to 16 hours. Speaking to guards without permission is prohibited. Attempting to escape is punishable by death. Any questions, he asks? Not expecting any. A brave soul raises his hand. How long until we get male privileges? The guard laughs. 6 months good behaviour, 2 letters a year after that. 6 months. You think of your family, who probably don't even know where you are. Will they still be waiting when, if, you can write to them? Now move to the barracks. You march through the camp. The searchlights illuminate a nightmarish landscape. Wooden barracks stretch in neat rows, surrounded by barbed wire fences and watchtowers. Beyond the fences, nothing but snow and darkness. In the distance, you can make out the silhouette of a coal mine, the reason this camp exists. See those? An older prisoner points to the watchtowers. Triple shifts up there. Guards hate it. Cold drives them crazy too, but they got better clothes. And those? He gestures to the barbed wire. Don't even think about it. Wolves out there would get you before you made 10 miles anyway. Wolves, you ask? Nature's guards, he says with a bitter smile. The perfect setup. Prison walls of ice and hungry predators. The comrades in Moscow thought of everything. You're assigned to Barracks 12, a long wooden structure that looks like it might collapse under the weight of the snow on its roof. Inside, it's barely warmer than outside. Triple bunks line the walls, packed so tightly that there's only a narrow aisle down the middle. Top bunk, a prisoner tells you, pointing upward. Lucky you. It takes a moment to realise why the top bunk is considered lucky. Heat rises, so the top bunks are marginally warmer. But more importantly, prisoners often relieve themselves during the night, and the urine drips down to the lower bunks. I've read accounts of survivors, I note. And they all talk about those little calculations. What bunk to take, how to wrap your food so it wouldn't get stolen, who to befriend. Your entire day becomes this endless series of survival decisions. You climb onto your assigned bunk. The mattress is a thin sack stuffed with straw that does little to cushion the wooden slats beneath. Your blanket is threadbare and stained. There's no pillow. A bell rings somewhere outside. Dinner, someone calls, and there's a sudden scramble of movement. You follow the crowd to the mess hall, another wooden building that smells of boiled cabbage and unwashed bodies. You're given a crude metal bowl and a piece of bread. The soup in the serving pot is mostly water with a few vegetable scraps floating in it. 140 grams, the server says, handing you a piece of black bread. You'll quickly learn that this daily bread ration, about the size of your fist, is the most precious commodity in camp. Men have been killed for less. First day, huh? An older prisoner sits next to you. His face is gaunt, his eyes deep set. Eat slow, make it last, and keep your bread with you at all times. You notice he has his piece of bread tucked inside his jacket, close to his chest. They call this pika, he explains, gesturing to the food. Ration, not enough to live on, too much to die quickly. Perfect balance. You take a bite of the bread. It's dense, sour, and filled with things you'd rather not identify, but it's food. I'm Mikhail, the man says. Political? You nod. Me too. Professor of literature made a joke about the wrong poem. He shrugs. 5 years. You? 10, you say, the reality of that sentence still not fully registering. Mikhail's face reveals nothing. Well, nobody serves their full term anyway. They let people out early, you ask hopefully. He laughs, but there's no humour in it. No, most don't last 3 winters. After dinner, you return to the barracks. The exhaustion of the journey and the shock of arrival finally catch up with you. You climb onto your bunk and try to get comfortable on the hard surface. Hey, I break in. Imagine for a second how different this is from where you are right now. Your soft bed, warm room, no wolves outside. Just that contrast is kind of mind-blowing. Around you, men are preparing for sleep. Some pray quietly, others stare silently at the ceiling. A few cry softly. You hear coughing, so much coughing. Later, you'll learn that tuberculosis runs rampant through the camp. First day's the worst, someone says from the bunk below. Actually, no. First day in the mine is the worst, but today's bad too. What should I expect tomorrow, you ask. They'll assign you a work detail. Pray it's not the deep mines. Surface work is better. Cold as hell, but better than the tunnels. Sleep comes fitfully. The barracks never fully quiet. There's always someone snoring, coughing, talking in their sleep, or getting up to use the single bucket in the corner that serves as a toilet for 50 men. Before dawn, a bell rings harshly, followed by shouts from the guards. Podyom, get up now! You're already awake. You barely slept. But others are slower to respond, and guards enter the barracks, striking bunks with batons. Roll call in 5 minutes. Anyone not outside gets no breakfast. There's a frantic scramble as men pull on their thin jackets and shoes. Nobody wants to miss breakfast, meagre as it is. Outside, it's still dark. The temperature has dropped even further during the night. You can see your breath crystallizing in front of your face. The prisoners form lines, shivering in the pre-dawn air. Guards move down the lines, counting. Then comes the waiting, standing perfectly still in formation while officials check the numbers against their records. One missing prisoner means nobody moves until they're found, alive or dead. All present, a guard finally announces. You march to the mess hall for breakfast, a watery porridge and more of the precious black bread. Just as you finish eating, an official enters and reads from a list. New arrivals, work assignments, barracks 12, prisoners report to administration building immediately following breakfast. Your stomach tightens. This is it. The moment that might determine whether you survive your first year at Vorkuta. In the administration building, a camp official sits behind a desk piled with papers. He doesn't look up as you enter. Name and number, he demands. You give them. He consults his list. Mine 7, coal extraction. Report to Foreman Petrov at the mine entrance. 0600 hours. Your heart sinks. You've been assigned to the deep mines, the most dangerous work in the camp. But you dare not protest. As you exit the building, you see the sun beginning to rise over the camp, a weak, watery light that does little to dispel the gloom. The silhouette of Mine 7 looms in the distance, its headframe stark against the grey sky. A prisoner passing by notices your gaze. First day in the mines. A. Word of advice. Keep your head down. Do what they tell you and don't make friends too quickly. Why not, you ask? He gives you a grim smile, because in that hole most don't last the month. No point getting attached. You stare at the mine entrance, a black mouth ready to swallow you whole. The journey that began with your arrest has led you here, to the frozen edge of the Soviet Empire, where men vanish into the earth and sometimes never return. The bell rings again, signalling the end of breakfast. It's time to report for your first shift in the mines of Vorkuta, a shift that might well last the rest of your life. So that's arrival day, I say quietly. Just the first of thousands for those who survived. The stories get wilder from here. The survival strategies, the social hierarchies that developed. We'll get into all that. But for now, just take a moment. Feel your warm bed, your safe room. And maybe spare a thought for the millions who never made it home from places like Vorkuta. The next morning would bring your first real test, your first shift in the coal mines of the Arctic Circle, but that's a story for another time. The 5 a.m. bell rips through your sleep like a rusty knife. 1 second of darkness, the next, chaos. Men around you leap from bunks, fumble for clothes, crash into each other in the narrow aisle. The veterans are already dressed, having slept in most of their clothes to combat the cold. Move it, a prisoner, not a guard, barks orders. He's the barracks elder, responsible for making sure everyone makes roll call. If someone's late, everyone suffers. You've been in Vorkuta 3 days now, long enough to understand the routine, not long enough to master it. The simplest tasks, wrapping footcloths correctly, gulping down breakfast fast enough, finding your place in line, are still clumsy struggles. Outside, it's pitch black. The sky above Vorkuta in winter never fully brightens, just a few hours of grey twilight around noon before darkness reclaims the land. The temperature gauge near the mess hall reads -38 degrees. Your nostrils freeze together when you breathe in too deeply. Hey, history nerd moment here, I break in. The polar night in Vorkuta lasted from December 17th to 27, 10 days of complete darkness, but the twilight periods before and after meant almost 2 months of functional darkness. Imagine that, going to work in the dark, working underground all day, then coming back up to more dark. Roll call is the first gauntlet of the day. 50 men from your barracks stand in 5 rows of 10, perfectly straight despite the wind cutting through your thin clothes. The guards count, recount, check their lists. A missing prisoner means a camp-wide lockdown until they're found. Being late means punishment for everyone. The count takes 20 minutes in the biting cold. Men around you stomp their feet and blow into their hands, trying to maintain circulation. The veterans know better than to complain. You're learning quickly. Barracks 12, all present, the guard finally shouts. Breakfast is next, the most important meal, though calling it a meal stretches the definition. The mess hall is marginally warmer than outside. You're given a metal bowl with watery porridge, a cup of hot water they call tea, and your daily bread ration. Eat your bread slow, Mikhail advises, sliding onto the bench beside you. Break off small pieces, make it last. The hunger will hit worst around 2 o'clock. You try to follow his advice, but the hunger is already gnawing at your stomach. 3 days in Vorkuta, and you're always hungry, always cold, always tired. This is your life now. How was your first mine shift? Mikhail asks, keeping his voice low. Brutal, you admit. I don't know how anyone survives it. You adapt, he says simply, or you don't. Your first day in Mine 7 had been worse than you imagined, descending in a rickety cage elevator, the darkness absolute except for a few oil lamps, the air thick with coal dust that coated your lungs, working in a cramped seam with a pickaxe, your back screaming in pain after the first hour, and 11 more hours to go. Listen, Mikhail interrupts your thoughts. You need to figure out your survival strategy fast. Everyone who makes it past the first month has one. What's yours? You ask. He hesitates, then taps his temple. I'm the barrack storyteller. After dinner, men give me a bit of their bread to tell stories, tales from Moscow, adventures from books, anything to make them forget where we are for a few minutes. Find what you're good at. Become necessary. The bell rings, signalling the end of breakfast. Time to line up for work assignment. The foreman, Petrov, is a thick-necked man with dead eyes. He was once a prisoner himself, now upgraded to trustee status. He divides the workers into brigades and assigns daily quotas. Your brigade has 20 men and a quota of 15 tons of coal. Same as yesterday, Petrov growls, which you failed to meet, so today you work until you hit 15 tons. No coming up until then. The walk to the mine entrance is just far enough to freeze your extremities. Guards herd you along, rifles at the ready. They don't worry much about escape attempts in winter. The cold is a more effective deterrent than bullets. Hold up, I interject. Let's talk about those quotas for a sec. They were designed to be nearly impossible to meet. That was intentional. See, if you didn't meet quota, they could cut your food ration. Less food meant less strength to work. Less strength meant falling further behind on quotas, and down you'd spiral. At the mine entrance, you collect your tools, a pickaxe with a loose head, a shovel with a splintered handle. No gloves, no helmets, no safety equipment of any kind. The state needs coal, not miners. The cage elevator creaks and sways as it carries you down. Some men cross themselves, others stare blankly ahead. The veteran miners have a dead look in their eyes you're starting to recognize. It's the look of men who have accepted their fate. The shaft opens into a main tunnel with smaller tunnels branching off. Your brigade heads down one of these offshoots, stooping to avoid hitting your heads on the low ceiling. The air gets thicker, hotter, harder to breathe the further you go. Your work area is a coal seam barely tall enough to sit up in. You'll spend the next 12 to 16 hours lying on your side, picking at the face of the seam, filling carts with coal. The dust coats everything, your skin, your clothes, the inside of your lungs. Within an hour, you're coughing up black phlegm. Pace yourself, whispers the miner next to you, an older Ukrainian named Taras. Don't try to work too fast at the start. Save your strength. But pacing yourself is luxury when the quota looms. The brigade leader keeps shouting updates. How many tons extracted? How many hours left in the shift? How far behind you're falling? By noon, your arms feel like lead. Your back spasms when you try to shift position. The water in your canteen is gone and thirst burns your throat. Break, calls the brigade leader. 5 minutes. Men slump against the tunnel walls, gasping for the thick air. You notice Taras pull something from inside his jacket, a small cloth bundle. He unwraps it carefully to reveal a piece of saved bread. You have to keep something back, he tells you, seeing your gaze. Never eat all your bread at breakfast. The work will kill you otherwise. After the break, the labour resumes. The hours blur together in a haze of pain and exhaustion. The air gets worse as the day progresses, the dust thicker, the oxygen thinner. Men start making mistakes. A cart derails. Someone drops a pickaxe on his foot. Arguments break out over trivial things. We're at 13 tons, the brigade leader shouts. 2 more to go. Push harder. It's well past the normal end of shift. Through the grapevine, word comes down that the other brigades have already gone up. Only yours remains, still short of quota. I knew a guy, I pause, who told me about something they called the final hour. When you'd been working for 14-15 hours straight and you were so exhausted you started hallucinating, but you still had to keep going. He said that's when accidents happened most, when men just broke. Midnight comes and goes. Men are barely functioning, moving like automatons. Finally, at nearly 1 a.m., the brigade leader announces you've hit 15 tons. The relief is palpable, but short-lived. You still have to climb out of the mine, walk back to camp, get through evening roll call, and find some food before you can rest. And wake up is still at 5 a.m. The return journey is a death march. Men stumble and fall in the snow, only to be roughly hauled to their feet by guards. At camp, the kitchen is closed, but your brigade is given cold porridge and bread saved from dinner, a small mercy for meeting quota, however late. Roll call is a blur. You're so tired you can barely stand. When finally allowed to return to the barracks, you collapse onto your bunk without removing your clothes or boots. Too exhausted even to eat your bread, you slip immediately into unconsciousness. The next day is the same, and the next and the next. You want to know how people survived this, I ask. They became experts at tiny efficiencies, how to hold the pickaxe to save energy, which guards might look the other way if you needed a minute's rest, which jobs in the mine were marginally less brutal. By your second week, you're starting to understand the unwritten rules of Vorkuta, the complex hierarchy among prisoners, the dangerous politics of the barracks, the black market that exists despite the guards' best efforts to stamp it out. Mikhail explains the prisoner pecking order one evening after dinner. At the top are the trustees, prisoners who work for the administration, guards, foremen, clerks. They get better food, better housing, lighter work. Most are criminals, not politicals. Below them, he continues, are the skilled workers, engineers, mechanics, medical staff, then common labourers like us. At the bottom are the goners, men too weak to work much longer. Everyone can tell who they are, skin like paper stretched over bones, eyes sunk deep. The walking dead. You've seen these men, skeletal figures shuffling around camp, gradually fading away until one day they simply don't appear at roll call. Nobody asks what happened to them. The trick, Mikhail says, is to find ways to move up, become skilled at something, make yourself valuable. Easier said than done, but you watch and learn. The man who repairs boots gets extra bread. The barber receives small favours. The medical orderly, though work to exhaustion, at least works indoors. Food becomes your obsession. Every calorie is precious. Men talk about meals from their past lives with religious reverence. Arguments break out over the memory of a recipe. Dreams are filled not with freedom, but with feasts. You know what's messed up, I interject. In some camps they actually had decent food on paper. The problem was it never reached the prisoners. Camp officials would sell it on the black market, or guards would take the best portions. By the time it reached the mess hall, that meat stew in the official records was just water with a few scraps of gristle. The camp operates on an intricate barter system. Cigarettes are currency. A pack can buy a repair to your boots. 2 packs might get you assigned to an easier work detail for a day. Extra bread can purchase almost anything. Information, protection, favours, theft is the unforgivable crime among prisoners. Take another man's bread and you might not wake up the next morning. The guards don't interfere with prisoner justice in such matters. One less mouth to feed. You witness your first bread theft on your 3rd week. A new arrival, desperate with hunger, snatches a piece from an older prisoner's hand and runs. He doesn't get far. A dozen men tackle him, drag him behind the barracks. He returns hours later, face unrecognizable, crawling on hands and knees. He disappears the next day. Nobody asks questions. The bread ration was sacred, I explain, like beyond sacred. Men would sleep with their daily portion tucked against their bodies. They'd rather lose a finger than their bread. There was a saying in the camps, "He who steals bread steals life." Weather is another constant enemy. The cold is relentless, cutting through your thin clothing like knives. Frostbite claims fingers, toes, ears, noses. The medical station is filled with men having blackened extremities amputated. Keep moving, veterans advise. Never stand still outside. Wiggle your toes constantly. Put paper inside your clothes for insulation. You learn to sleep with your boots under your head to prevent them freezing solid overnight. You learn to urinate on your hands to warm them in an emergency. You learn that failing to brush the snow from your eyebrows can lead to them freezing to your skin. But even as the physical challenges mount, it's the psychological torture that proves most insidious. The constant surveillance, the arbitrary punishment, the knowledge that your 10-year sentence might as well be forever, the loss of your name, your identity, your past life. I saw a report from a camp doctor once, I mention, who said the psychological breaking point for most prisoners came between month 2 and 3. That's when the reality fully set in. This wasn't temporary, this was their life now. One evening, as you sit on your bunk too exhausted to sleep, Taurus approaches. "You're losing weight too fast," he says bluntly. "You won't last the winter at this rate." "What can I do?" you ask. "The work is impossible. The food is nothing." "There are options," he says carefully. "Desperate ones," he explains in hushed tones. Some prisoners deliberately injure themselves to get medical leave. Cut off a finger, drink kerosene, reopen healing wounds. The hospital, though basic, is still better than the mines. "But be careful," he warns. "They're wise to most tricks. Get caught faking, and it's the punishment cells. Nobody survives those in winter." The punishment cells are legendary, unheated concrete boxes where prisoners are kept in underwear with reduced rations. 3 days is considered a death sentence in winter. "I'm not that desperate," you tell him. "Not yet. You will be," he replies. "We all reach that point, eventually." But there are other survival strategies. Some prisoners form tight bonds, sharing resources and protecting each other. These small families often last longer than loners. Mikhail has invited you to join his circle. Him, Taras, and a young Estonian named Rain. They pool their resources, share information, watch each other's backs. It's not friendship exactly. Emotional attachment is a luxury few can afford, but it's a practical alliance. During bad times, Mikhail explains, one of us might get a package or find an extra piece of bread. We share. During the worst times, we keep each other from giving up. The social bonds were critical, I point out. Guards tried to break them up because they knew isolated prisoners died faster, but humans naturally form communities, even in the worst places, maybe especially in the worst places. The camp has an underground information network that moves with surprising speed. News from other barracks, other mines, even other camps hundreds of miles away somehow filters through. Prisoners whisper about changes in Moscow, about international politics, about rumors of amnesty or worsening conditions. Most of it is fantasy, but hope is as necessary as bread. You quickly learn which guards can be bribed, which are sadists to be avoided, which might show small mercies if approached correctly. There's Stepan, who looks the other way if you take a minute's rest. There's Dmitri, who will beat you for the same offence. There's Igor, who might slip you an extra bread crust if you fix his boot or compose a letter to his girlfriend. Guards weren't universally monsters, I note. Some were just ordinary guys doing a job, trying to survive themselves, not defending the system. It was evil through and through, but individual guards sometimes showed humanity. Others, though, well, power attracts certain types. By your second month, you've developed your own survival routines. You save a third of your morning bread for the mine. You wrap your feet in paper beneath your footcloths. You've learned to work efficiently enough to avoid the worst exhaustion while still contributing your share to the brigade's quota. You've also learned the strange seasonal rhythms of Vorkuta. Winter is the time of death. Cold, darkness, and despair claim the weak. Spring brings mud so deep men drown in it. Summer brings mosquitoes in biblical swarms. Autumn is a brief respite before winter's return. One morning, Mikhail doesn't rise at the wake-up bell. You shake him, but he doesn't respond. His skin is hot to the touch, his breathing rapid and shallow. "Medical," you shout, and the barracks elder comes running. "Lung fever," he pronounces after a quick examination. "Get him to the infirmary." You and Taras carry Mikhail through the snow to the medical station, a slightly larger barracks with a red cross painted on the door. Inside, the smell of disinfectant barely covers the stench of infection and death. A prisoner doctor examines Mikhail briefly. "Pneumonia. Not surprising with the mine dust. We'll keep him." "Will he survive?" you ask. The doctor looks at you with tired eyes. "Depends on how strong he is and how valuable to the administration. Engineers get antibiotics, regular miners get rest and aspirin. You leave Mikhail on a narrow cot, knowing you might never see him again. The survival math is simple and brutal. Men who can't work don't eat. Men who don't eat don't live. But life in Vorkuta teaches you to continue regardless. You return to your barracks, collect your tools, and head to the mines. The quotas don't care about your sick friend. The coal must flow. That night, lying on your bunk, you realize something has changed. 2 months ago, you were horrified by everything. The conditions, the cruelty, the casual brutality. Now you accept it as normal. You step over a dead man on your way to breakfast without breaking stride. You barter and scheme for extra crumbs of bread. You've learned to survive in a world designed to kill you. "That's the thing about humans," I say softly. "We adapt, even to hell, maybe especially to hell. The price of that adaptation is losing pieces of your humanity, one small compromise at a time. The morning bell will ring at 5 a.m., another day of coal dust and hunger and cold. Another day of calculated survival, another day of Vorkuta. But for now, in the darkness of the barracks, surrounded by the snores and whimpers of 50 broken men, you allow yourself one moment of weakness. You think of home, of freedom, of a world beyond barbed wire. Then you push those thoughts away. In Vorkuta, hope is a luxury that weighs you down, and you've learned to travel light. A month passes, then 2. You've survived your first 60 days at Vorkuta, which the old-timers tell you is something of a miracle. Your body has changed, ribs visible through your skin, face gaunt, hands calloused and scarred, but you're still breathing, still moving, still mining. You've become something of an expert on coal. Not by choice. Nobody arrives at Vorkuta dreaming of becoming a miner, but 14 hours a day, 6 days a week spent hacking at coal seams teaches you things whether you want to learn them or not. "Ready for another thrilling day in the mines?" Taras asks, as you lace up your boots before dawn. His humour is dark as the tunnels you work in, but it's one of the few things keeping you both sane. "Can't wait," you reply. "The ambience, the cuisine, the delightful company of our dear foreman Petrov." Mikhail survived his bout with pneumonia, though he returned from the infirmary even thinner, weaker. The administration reassigned him to lighter work sorting coal above ground. A blessing and curse. Less dangerous, but also more exposed to the elements. I spent months researching these mines, I interject. The coal seams at Vorkuta were some of the richest in Russia, but also some of the most dangerous, hard to access, prone to collapses, full of methane pockets. In a normal country, they might have waited for better technology. But Stalin didn't care about miner safety. He needed coal for industrialization, and prisoners were disposable. The walk to Mine 7 has become so routine you could do it blindfolded, past the administration building, through the second checkpoint, along the path stomped in snow by thousands of feet. The head frame of the mine rises above you, a gallows against the dark sky. You've learned to read the signs at the mine entrance. If the cage operator looks nervous, it means there's been an accident below. If extra guards are posted, it means someone tried to escape or sabotage operations. Today, everything looks normal, which in Vorkuta means merely terrible, instead of catastrophic. The descent into the mine is the moment most prisoners dread. The cage, really just an open metal platform with minimal railings, drops so fast your stomach lurches. The darkness swallows you immediately, with only a few weak lamps marking the way. The air changes, becoming heavy with coal dust and the smell of human sweat. "Going down," the operator calls, and the platform lurches into motion. As you descend, Rain, the young Estonian who's become part of your small circle, leans over. "Heard anything about the new quotas?" You shake your head. The administration changes work requirements frequently, almost always increasing them. It's a way to extract maximum labour while justifying reduced rations when prisoners inevitably fail to meet impossible targets. "Word is they're upping ours to 18 tons, he whispers. "Brigade 4 got the news yesterday." 18 tons. Your group has been struggling to hit 15. 18 would mean even longer shifts, even less rest. The cage shudders to a stop at the bottom, nearly 1,000 feet below the surface. Here the main tunnel branches in multiple directions, each leading to different work areas. Electric lights, bare bulbs hanging from wires, provide minimal illumination. The air is thick enough to chew. Petrov, the foreman, awaits with his clipboard. "Brigade 8, Tunnel C today. We've had some collapses in B, so they're bringing in support beams." What he doesn't say is what happened to the men who were working in Tunnel B when it collapsed. Some questions are better left unasked. "You know what I discovered in my research?" I say. "The miners didn't even have proper helmets. Think about that, working in unstable tunnels with rocks constantly falling, and the best protection they had was a cloth cap. In American mines during the same period, hard hats were standard. But prisoners? They were lucky to get boots." Tunnel C is one of the worst, a narrow seam that requires you to work on your knees or bent at the waist. Today you're assigned to be a picker, which means hacking at the coal face with a pickaxe while others shovel the loosened coal into carts. "Watch for the sparklers," Taras warns as you begin. He's referring to the small sparks that sometimes appear when your pick strikes certain types of rock, a warning sign of methane. Hit enough of those sparklers, and the whole tunnel could ignite in a flash. The work begins as it always does, slow, methodical, painful. The air is so thick with dust that your headlamp creates a cone of visible particles. Every breath coats your lungs with black powder that you'll be coughing up for hours after your shift. The lung diseases were almost universal, I note. Black lung, silicosis, tuberculosis accelerated by coal dust. One survivor estimated that a miner who avoided accidents might last 5 years before his lungs gave out completely. Your brigade has 20 men, split into smaller teams. You work with Taras and 2 others, a former Moscow accountant named Pavel and a Latvian farmer called Janis. Each has their role. You pick, Pavel and Janis shovel, Taras pushes the filled cart to the main tunnel where it's attached to others and pulled to the surface. The rhythm of the work becomes almost hypnotic. Swing, crack, swing, crack. The coal face gradually recedes as you chip away at it. Your arms and back protest, but you've learned to ignore them. Pain is the constant companion of every prisoner. Acknowledge it, but never surrender to it. Gress, check. Petrov's voice echoes down the tunnel. He appears with his clipboard, counting filled carts, estimating tonnage. You're falling behind. Pick up the pace or nobody eats tonight. It's an empty threat. They can't actually withhold all food without risking a riot, but they can and do reduce rations for failing to meet quota. The difference between a full ration and a reduced one might seem small to an outsider, but to a starving prisoner it's the margin between survival and becoming a goner. I'll help with picking, Taras offers when Petrov leaves. We can switch out every hour. You nod gratefully. This is how you survive. Small kindnesses, shared burdens. The administration tries to pit prisoners against each other, but in the mines, cooperation is the only way to live. By midday, your arms feel leaden. Sweat soaks your clothes despite the chill of the tunnel. The dust has formed a paste on your skin, in your eyes, between your teeth. Your water bottle is long empty, your morning bread consumed. Hunger gnaws at your belly, but it's a familiar sensation now, almost a friend. Hang on, Taras says suddenly, holding up a hand. Listen. Everyone freezes. In the mines, unexpected sounds usually mean danger. A low creaking comes from somewhere above, like wood under stress. Support beams, Pavel whispers. We need to... He never finishes the sentence. With a crack like a gunshot, the timber support nearest to your position splinters. A shower of coal and rock follows. Not a full collapse, but enough to send everyone scrambling backward. Out! Taras shouts. Move! You stumble away from the partial collapse, heart hammering. When the dust settles, you see that your work area is now partially blocked. No one is hurt, but the message is clear. The mountain is hungry today. So, what are you supposed to do in this situation? I ask. Report it? Take a break? Nope. The quota doesn't care about safety. The foreman just moved miners to a different section and expected them to make up for lost time. Imagine watching part of your workplace collapse, then being told, keep working or you don't eat tonight. Petrov arrives to survey the damage, his face impassive. Move to section 5, he orders, and you're still expected to meet quota. Section 5 is even deeper, even hotter. The air there is so bad that men sometimes faint after an hour, but you have no choice. In the Gulag, orders aren't suggestions. The new section requires a 15-minute walk through ever-narrowing tunnels. By the time you arrive, precious work time has been lost. Your team sets up again, distributing picks and shovels, positioning carts, checking the stability of support beams with experienced taps. We'll never hit 15 tons now, Pavel mutters. Then we work until we do, Taras replies simply, and so the labour continues. Your muscles scream in protest, but you find that second wind that comes from necessity. The human body has reserves it only reveals when survival is at stake. Hours blend together in the darkness. The mine has no day or night, no seasons, no weather, just endless black rock, the scrape of metal on coal, the creaking of supports, the rumble of distant carts. I've seen men lose track of time completely down here, I remark. One survivor described how he'd sometimes forget if it was winter or summer, 1935 or 1940. The mine became its own universe with its own rules. Midway through the afternoon, though you have no way to know the exact time, a commotion breaks out in a nearby section. Shouts echo down the tunnel, followed by the sound of running feet. Cave in, someone yells. Section 6. Your team freezes. Section 6 is just beyond the bend in your tunnel, close enough that another collapse could trigger one in your area. Guards and foremen rush past. There's an evacuation procedure of sorts, though it's rarely followed properly. Officially, all miners should head to the main shaft in an orderly fashion. Unofficially, it's often chaos. Stay put, Taurus advises. If we run, they'll mark us as troublemakers. So you wait, listening to the sounds of rescue or recovery from the next section. The shouting eventually subsides, replaced by the rhythmic sound of digging. Then stretchers move past your position, carrying still forms covered with jackets. How many? Pavel asks a passing worker. 3 dead, 2 injured, the man replies without stopping. Support beam cracked right down the middle. You cross yourself, a gesture you abandoned years before Vorkuta, but have resumed here where faith is sometimes the only thing keeping men going. The dead could easily have been you or your teammates. Mining accidents are so common they barely register as unusual events. Just last week, a man 2 tunnels over was crushed when a coal car jumped its track. The week before, 2 men asphyxiated in a pocket of bad air. The death toll from accidents was actually higher than from the cold or hunger in the mining camps, I point out. One report I found estimated that in Vorkuta's worst years they lost 3 to 5 men per day to mining accidents, and those were just the reported ones. Work resumes with barely a pause. Death is acknowledged but not dwelled upon. The living still have quotas to meet. By the time your shift should be ending, your brigade has produced perhaps 12 tons of coal, well short of the 15-ton quota. As expected, Petrov announces you'll be working extended hours. Nobody comes up until we hit 15, he says flatly. This is when the real test begins. Working past exhaustion, past hunger, past the point where your body screams for rest. The brain becomes fuzzy, reactions slow, mistakes more common. It's when most accidents happen. They called it the final hour, I say quietly. Except it wasn't an hour. It could be 4, 5, 6 extra hours of work when you were already dead on your feet. Survivors described it as a waking nightmare where you'd hallucinate from exhaustion but still had to swing that pickaxe. Your team adopts a rotation system to cope. 3 work while 1 rests for 10 minutes, then switch. It's technically against regulations, but even Petrov looks the other way. Better to have men working at 75% capacity than collapsing entirely. The hours drag on. Men grow silent, conserving every ounce of energy for the work. Your world narrows to the coal face in front of you, the weight of the pick in your hands, the burning in your muscles. Near what must be midnight, the brigade leader announces you've hit 14 tons. Almost there. One final push. It's during this push that the accident happens. Pavel, exhausted beyond reason, misjudges his footing while maneuvering a filled cart. The heavy vehicle rolls back, pinning his leg against the tunnel wall. His scream echoes through the shaft. You and Taurus rush to help, lifting the cart enough for Janis to pull Pavel free. His leg is clearly broken, bone visible through torn pants and flesh. "Get the medic," you shout, but everyone knows the reality. The camp medics don't come into the mine for a single injury. Pavel will have to make it to the surface first. "I can't climb," he gasps through clenched teeth. "Can't put weight on it." "We'll carry you," Taurus says, though you're all so exhausted the prospect seems impossible. Petrov arrives, surveys the situation with cold eyes. "Put him in an empty cart. You two, get him to the surface. The rest of you, back to work. We're still short." And so Taurus and you begin the grueling process of pushing a coal cart containing Pavel through the narrow tunnels toward the main shaft. His face is grey with pain, teeth gritted to keep from crying out at every bump and jostle. "Sorry," you mutter after a particularly rough section. "Almost there." "Not your fault," he manages to reply. "Just get me up." The journey to the main shaft seems endless. By the time you reach it, your remaining strength is nearly gone. The cage operator eyes Pavel in the cart, sighs, and gestures for you to wheel him on. "Both of you go up with him," he says. "No sense sending you back down this late." It's a small mercy, one of the rare ones in Vorkuta. You gratefully squeeze onto the platform with the cart. The ascent is disorienting after so many hours below ground. The air gradually changes, becomes cooler, slightly fresher. The darkness above gives way to dim light, and then you're at the surface. The shock of emerging is always the same, a momentary disbelief at the existence of a world beyond the mine. Tonight, it's snowing heavily, fat flakes swirling under the harsh work lights. The cold hits like a physical blow after the relative warmth of the mine depths. Camp medics take Pavel away on a stretcher. You'll learn later that he lost the leg, amputation being the standard treatment for most serious injuries. He'll be assigned to lighter duties if he survives, perhaps boot repair or kitchen work. Injuries like that were common, I note, and in a sick way, some prisoners saw them as a twisted blessing. Lose a limb, get out of the mines. Some men deliberately maimed themselves for exactly that reason, anything to escape the underground death trap. The walk back to camp is a stumbling nightmare. Your legs barely support you, your lungs burn from coal dust, your empty stomach cramps painfully, but somehow you make it through evening roll call, through the perfunctory meal of watery soup and bread, back to the relative sanctuary of your barracks. You collapse onto your bunk, too exhausted even to remove your filthy clothes. Sleep takes you immediately, but it's not restful. In your dreams, you're still in the mine, still picking at coal that never ends, still hearing the creaks of support beams ready to give way. I talked to a Vorkuta survivor once, I say softly. He told me he still had the same nightmare 60 years later, still heard the sounds of picks on coal, still felt the dust in his lungs. The mine never really let him go. The next morning comes too soon. As always, your body protests every movement, muscles stiff and sore, lungs still congested with dust. But the bell rings and you rise. Roll call waits for no one. At breakfast, news circulates that quotas have indeed been raised to 18 tons per brigade. A collective groan rises from the mess hall. 18 tons means even longer shifts, even more exhaustion, even more accidents. They're trying to kill us faster, someone mutters. No, Taurus corrects. They're trying to get more coal with fewer guards, fewer rations, fewer resources. Our dying is just a side effect they don't care about. The morning brings another surprise. Mikhail approaches your table, his face grim. "They're reassigning me," he says without preamble. "Back to the mines. Doctor says I'm recovered enough." You all know what this means. Mikhail is still weak from pneumonia. The mines will likely kill him within weeks. "Which section?" Taurus asks. Mine 9, Brigade 3. A glance passes between Taurus and Rain. Mine 9 is the worst of all. Deeper, more dangerous, with more accidents and deaths than any other. "I'll speak to Petrov," Taurus says. "See if he can get you in our brigade instead. At least we can look out for you." Mikhail nods gratefully, but his eyes show he doesn't expect much. The administration rarely grants such requests. The camp system is designed to separate, isolate, break bonds between prisoners. The whole system was intentionally arbitrary, I explain. That was by design. If prisoners could predict what would happen, they might game the system. But when any day might bring reassignment, punishment, or death for no reason, that breaks people faster than anything. The bell rings for work assignments. Another day in the mines awaits. Another shift of coal dust and danger, of back-breaking labor and gnawing hunger. Another day of Vorkuta. As you file out of the mess hall, Taurus grips your shoulder briefly. One day at a time, he says. Just focus on today. It's the closest thing to wisdom the Gulag has to offer. Don't think about your 10-year sentence. Don't think about the approaching winter. Don't think about tomorrow's quota or next week's hunger. Just survive today. The mine, the cold, the exhaustion, the hunger. One more day in the deep black seams beneath Vorkuta, where men are spent like currency in Stalin's mad rush for coal. 3 months into your sentence, you discover that Vorkuta isn't just a prison camp. It's a society with its own unwritten laws, power structures, and social hierarchies. Complex, brutal, and entirely focused on survival. It's like a twisted mirror of the outside world, Mikhail explains one evening after dinner. He survived his reassignment to Mine 9 when Taurus somehow convinced Petrov to transfer him to your brigade instead. We have our aristocracy, our middle class, our untouchables. You've begun to notice these distinctions. The camp has clear castes, as rigidly defined as any ancient empire. So tonight we're talking social dynamics, I interject. This is where it gets interesting, because these camps weren't just places of suffering, they were entire micro-societies. People formed bonds, fell in love, made enemies, built reputations, all the drama of human life just concentrated and intensified by extreme circumstances. At the top of Vorkuta's hierarchy are the trustees, prisoners who work with the administration, camp guards who are themselves former prisoners, clerks who handle the paperwork, foremen who oversee work brigades. They wear better clothes, eat better food, sleep in separate quarters. Never trust a trustee, Taurus warned you early on. They sold their souls for an extra bowl of soup. But it's more complicated than that. Some trustees use their position to help other prisoners when they can. A warning about upcoming inspections, an extra ration slipped to a dying man, a work reassignment that might save someone's life. Others are crueler than the regular guards, desperate to prove their loyalty to the administration. Below the trustees are the skilled workers, doctors, engineers, mechanics, cooks. Their specialized knowledge makes them valuable enough to be treated marginally better. They work indoors, away from the worst weather. Their barracks might have slightly better heating. Their food might include an extra ladleful of soup. Then come the criminal prisoners, thieves, murderers, gangsters from Russia's underworld. Though they do the same labor as political prisoners, they enjoy unofficial privileges. Guards tend to leave them alone. They run protection rackets, control the black market, claim the best bunks in the barracks. The administration actually